with the small end nationalism, you could say that nearly everybody in Scotland is a nationalist in terms of the way they feel about their identity and the way that they they understand Scotland has been a nation, has been a separate nation within the UK. And then the other side, there's the larger N, the capital N nationalism, which then is more explicitly political, and that would be associated with people who actually do support the SNP or who support independence. Mm-hmm. And quite surprisingly, often people even who seem to feel strongly Scottish in a personal sense, that doesn't necessarily translate into feeling that strong nationalism in a political sense.
If you look at where the votes came from this time in the election, Tayside and sort of Angus was the sort of SNP stronghold, and I think they get a lot of support from youngsters, have just turned 18 and can vote, and they maybe feel a wee bit more passionate about the we hate the English thing.
Just 3 years ago, things radically changed in the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish National Party won, and for the first time a pro-independent party with a leader in Scotland. The Scottish National Party wants to ask the Scots what they want to do with their future. Continue as they are, have more powers, or go fully independent.
I think it's good for Scottish politics as well that someone's asking the question, where when Labour in power before SNP, there was no chance of that coming about. So I think it's important it does go to the public for a vote.
Well, I think it's great that we can express our feelings openly and express our thoughts and feelings openly, because as you said, in many countries you can't really do that. With regards to the independence, myself, I'm not. I mean, I think Scotland could probably sustain itself, definitely, but I mean, why create more separation in the world? Is what I view.
I don't have any desire for it to be independent at all, because if someone said to me, where are you from, I would say Scotland rather than Britain. But then I think, does Scotland rely quite a lot on the rest of the UK, money-wise? Do we not need everybody together? Because there's not that many people in Scotland. Would they be able to support themselves?
Opinion polls suggest, and surveys and more substantial surveys suggest that only a minority of Scots want independence. And when you give them a choice between devolution or a little bit more devolution or independence or no change, only about a third will opt for independence. Most Scots are very happy with devolution. They want a little bit more. They want more powers to Holyrood within the United Kingdom, but they stop short, and sometimes quite a fair bit short, of independence.
I think there's a reason why England don't want Scotland to be independent on their own. I mean, first of all, Scotland's an oil country, England's not. And also it's got a big seafood trade as well, with fish all around the country. So I think Scotland could sustain itself pretty easily. So I guess ideally I would like Scotland to be independent.
It's so difficult to say. I don't want independence because I am anti-English at all. That's not the case. I feel very proud to say I'm British in some ways, but economically speaking, it might be viable for Scotland to become independent because the North Sea, for example, without oil supply, it can make Scotland quite a wealthy country.
I think it's a belief of a few Scots, but I think it's just done on propaganda rather than. I don't personally think it would be a very good thing for Scotland to be independent. So, because we're part of Great Britain, and we benefit a lot from the English economy, and so I just don't understand how we could do it ourselves, and I think it'd be a step backwards for a nation rather than a step forwards.
There's two arguments against independence. One is that Scotland's too small. It's a small place, it's got 5 million people, it's simply too small to survive in the modern world. And I think that's a ludicrous argument. You only need to look to Denmark or Norway or other small places to know that small is not necessarily bad. The real argument is about the economy, is whether Scotland would benefit materially from being separate from the United Kingdom or whether it would suffer. And what's interesting there is the debate is shifting. In the 70s it was all about North Sea oil. It was about these incredible reserves out there under the ocean that was funding Mrs. Thatcher's great experiments in the 80s. I mean, Things have completely shifted now. The actual issue is that if Scotland was independent, how much of the UK's debt would it have to take?
With the Conservatives coming into power, I think Scotland's chances of independence is increased, because I think the Conservatives are going to bring a lot of cuts, especially to the public sector. And I think the public sector is the biggest in Scotland, or one of the biggest industries. And I think it's going to affect people in Scotland. They'll want change, I think, especially in the coming years. So I do think Scottish independence in the future is going to be more of a possibility.
The Labour Party, the big thing that they had in both England and Scotland was don't let the Conservatives back in, because in the 1980s and the early 1990s, under Thatcher, things were terrible. So there was a kind of anyone but the Conservatives in Scotland, and that made it very different to England. What we've ended up with, of course, is a coalition led by the Conservatives with the Liberal Democrats. Now that changes in Scotland the dynamics completely. The next election in Scotland, next May, Labour cannot go into coalition with the Liberal Democrats, which is what they did from 1999 to 2007, because the Liberal Democrats are now supporting the Conservatives in England. It would be unthinkable for Labour to be in coalition.
Independent or not, here everyone has a very clear idea of what to say when asked, "Where are you from?"
Crossing a border in South America, and I gave my little tourist card over, and I'd put in nationality Scottish. The woman gave me it back, and she said, "Look, what is on your passport here? Does it say Scottish?" "No, it says British, so go and change your card." And I was so angry.
I always say Scottish. Even though they always think I'm British, I always say Scottish because I want to be identified as Scottish.
I would say I was Scottish rather than British.
When I go abroad and say who I am or what my nationality is, it changes. It depends where I am.
If someone asked me where I was from, I'd say Scotland, but if someone asked me to write something down, like on a hotel booking, I'd probably write British.
The day finishes in the capital of Scotland. In the streets, people seem to be focused on the next Edinburgh Festival and to keep the tourists happy, but the debate is evident. In the local pubs, in the newspapers, in the Parliament, political changes have left a complex scenario, and it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. If something is going to happen, just time will tell where Scotland is going.
Make a few mistakes, but all the same you'll never be a bore. I'm proud to feel so young, talking with my tongue. Proud to be so crazy in my ways. Proud to take a chance and go against the odds. I'm proud to be so careless in my ways. And I'm going down to Laurel. It's a dirty, stinking town.